The rain was coming down hard that Tuesday evening, the kind of rain that makes you want to stay indoors with a hot cup of coffee. But David was at work, doing his usual rounds through the parking garage at Riverside Mall. He'd been a security officer there for 7 years now, and honestly, he loved his job. Sure, it wasn't glamorous and the pay wasn't amazing, but there was something satisfying about keeping people safe and helping them when they needed it. David was 42 years old, a father of 2 kids and someone who believed in treating everyone right. His mother had raised him that way. She used to say, "David, you never know what someone's going through, so be kind to everyone." Those words stuck with him through the years. It was around 7 in the evening when David noticed something unusual on the second level of the parking garage. An old man was standing in front of one of those automated payment kiosks, the ones where you stick your ticket in and pay before heading to your car. The man looked confused and upset, patting his pockets over and over again like he'd lost something important. David walked closer and could see the man was soaking wet. Rain dripped from his thin gray hair, running down his wrinkled face. He wore an old brown coat that had seen better days, probably about 20 years ago. The coat had a tear near the shoulder, and the pockets looked worn out from years of use. His shoes were old too, the kind you keep wearing even though you know you should throw them away. "Everything okay, sir?" David asked, keeping his voice gentle. He'd learned over the years that some people get embarrassed when they're struggling with something. The old man looked up and David could see his hands were shaking. Whether it was from the cold or something else, David couldn't tell. "I'm trying to pay for my parking," the man said, his voice raspy and tired. "But I'm a bit short on cash." David looked at the screen. The total showed $12.50. The old man had a small pile of coins and crumpled bills in his trembling hands, counting them for what looked like the 10th time. "How much do you have?" David asked. "Only $9, the man replied, his shoulders sagging. "I thought I had more, but I must have spent it earlier. I don't know what to do. My car's here and I need to get home." David could see the worry in the old man's eyes. There was something about that look that hit him hard. Maybe it reminded him of his own father, who had passed away 3 years ago. Or maybe it was just the simple human instinct to help someone who needed it. "Don't worry about it," David said, pulling out his own wallet. "I've got you covered." The old man's eyes went wide. No, I couldn't possibly." "Really, it's fine," David interrupted with a warm smile. He pulled out $4 from his wallet and fed them into the machine along with the old man's $9. The machine beeped, printed out a receipt, and the barrier would now let the car through. For a moment, the old man just stood there staring at David. Then his eyes filled with tears. Actual tears. David felt a lump form in his own throat. "Thank you," the old man whispered. "You have no idea what this means to me." "It's just a few dollars," David said, feeling a bit awkward with all the emotion. "Really, it's no big deal." "It is a big deal," the old man insisted, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "I've been having a rough time lately. Money's been tight and today has been particularly hard. You didn't have to help me, but you did. That matters more than you know." David felt his heart squeeze a little. Here was this elderly man, probably someone's grandfather, struggling with just a parking fee. It made David think about his own life, his own struggles. Just last month, his daughter needed new shoes for school, and money had been tight then too. His wife worked as a nurse, and between both their salaries, they made it work, but there wasn't much left over. Still, David couldn't just walk away from someone who needed help. "Where's your car?" David asked. "Let me walk you there." "It's really pouring out there." The old man pointed toward the far corner of the garage. They walked together, David slowing his pace to match the elderly man's shuffling steps. The parking garage echoed with the sound of rain pounding on the concrete above them. "What's your name, son?" the old man asked as they walked. "David. David Rodriguez." "David Rodriguez," the old man repeated, as if memorizing it. "That's a good, strong name. Are you married, David?" "Yes, sir. Married with 2 kids. A boy and a girl, 10 and 8 years old. Family man." The old man nodded approvingly. "That's good, very good. You're teaching them well, I can tell." "I try," David said. "My mom always taught me to help people when I can. Even small things matter, you know." They reached an old sedan, probably from the late 90s. It was dented in a few places and the paint was fading, but it looked like it still ran. The old man fumbled with his keys, his hands still shaking. "Are you okay to drive?" David asked, suddenly concerned. "You're shaking pretty bad. I could call someone for you if you need." The old man smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. "I'm all right, son. Just cold and a bit emotional. I'll be fine once I get the heat going in the car." He opened the door and turned back to David one more time. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," David replied. "Why did you help me?" "You don't know me. I could be anyone." David thought about it for a second. "I guess because it was the right thing to do. If my dad were in your situation, I'd hope someone would help him too." "We're all just trying to get by, right?" The old man's eyes got watery again. He reached out and shook David's hand firmly. "Thank you, David Rodriguez. I won't forget this. I promise you that." David waved as the old sedan pulled away, its taillights disappearing down the ramp into the stormy evening. He stood there for a moment, raindrops occasionally blowing in from outside the garage, then headed back to his security post. As he walked, he thought about his shift ending in an hour. He'd go home, have dinner with his wife and kids, maybe help his son with homework. Just another regular Tuesday. He had no idea that $3.50 would change his entire life. He had no idea who that old man really was or what was about to happen next. 3 weeks went by, and David had almost forgotten about the old man in the parking garage. Life had a way of moving forward like that. He'd helped other people since then. A woman who locked her keys in her car, a teenager who couldn't find his parents in the crowded mall, just normal stuff that came with the job. It was a Thursday afternoon, and David was eating his lunch at the security desk when the phone rang. He picked it up, expecting it to be someone asking about lost and found or reporting a suspicious vehicle. "Riverside Mall Security, this is David speaking." "Hello, is this David Rodriguez?" a woman's voice asked. She sounded professional, the kind of voice you hear in fancy office buildings. "Yes, this is David. How can I help you?" "Mr. Rodriguez, my name is Patricia Walsh. I'm calling from Henderson and Associates law firm downtown. Do you have a moment to speak?" David's stomach dropped. A law firm? His mind started racing. Had he done something wrong? Was someone suing the mall? Was this about a parking ticket he forgot to pay? Yeah, I guess so," he said, setting down his sandwich. His appetite was suddenly gone. "Mr. Rodriguez, we need to verify some information. On November 14th, were you working at Riverside Mall in the evening shift?" David thought back. November 14th. That was the rainy Tuesday. "Yes, I was working that evening." "Why, is something wrong?" "Did you assist an elderly gentleman in the parking garage that evening?" "Something regarding a parking fee?" Now David was really confused. How did a law firm know about that? "Yes, I helped an older man who was short on cash for the parking meter." "Is he okay? Did something happen to him?" There was a pause on the other end. "Mr. Rodriguez, we need you to come to our office tomorrow if possible. There's a matter we need to discuss with you in person. It's quite urgent." "What's this about?" David asked, his heart beating faster now. "Am I in some kind of trouble?" No, nothing like that," Patricia said, though her tone didn't exactly calm his nerves. "But this is something we really need to discuss face to face. Can you come to our office tomorrow? Say around 10 in the morning?" David looked at his schedule. He wasn't working the morning shift tomorrow. "I guess I can. But can you at least tell me what this is regarding? It concerns the gentleman you helped. That's all I can say over the phone. I'll text you our address. Please bring a valid ID with you." After hanging up, David just sat there staring at the phone. What in the world was going on? He tried calling the number back, but it went straight to voicemail. A text came through with an address downtown, in the business district where all the tall buildings were. That evening, David couldn't stop thinking about it. At dinner, his wife Lisa noticed he was pushing his food around his plate. "You okay, babe?" she asked. "You've barely touched your chicken," David told her about the phone call. Lisa's eyes went wide. "A law firm? David, what could they possibly want?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe the old guy fell or something after he left and they think it's the mall's fault. But why would they call me specifically? Did you do anything wrong that night?" She asked. "No, I just paid for his parking. That's it." Walked him to his car to make sure he was okay. Their son Miguel looked up from his homework. "Dad, are you going to jail?" "No, buddy, I'm not going to jail," David said, though he wasn't entirely sure about anything at this point. It's probably just some paperwork thing. But David didn't sleep well that night. He kept running through every detail of that evening, trying to figure out what could possibly require a lawyer's attention. Maybe the old man had died and they needed a witness statement. Maybe he'd been robbed later and they thought David saw something. The next morning, David put on his best clothes, which honestly weren't that impressive. He had one decent button-up shirt and a pair of dress pants he wore to church occasionally. He took the bus downtown, watching the city change from regular neighborhoods to tall glass buildings and expensive cars. Henderson and Associates was on the 32nd floor of one of those shiny towers. David felt out of place the moment he walked into the lobby. Everyone was wearing expensive suits and carrying leather briefcases. He was pretty sure his entire outfit cost less than one of their watches. The receptionist directed him to a conference room. David's palms were sweating as he walked down the hallway. The carpet was so thick it felt like walking on clouds. Pictures of important-looking people lined the walls. The conference room had a huge table that could probably seat 20 people. But only 3 people were sitting there, all in expensive suits with stacks of folders in front of them. A woman who looked to be in her 50s stood up and extended her hand. "Mr. Rodriguez, thank you for coming. I'm Patricia Walsh, we spoke on the phone. Please have a seat." David shook her hand and sat down, feeling like he was in a movie or something. This didn't feel real. "Mr. Rodriguez," Patricia began, sliding a folder across the table toward him. "What I'm about to tell you is going to come as quite a shock." David's mouth went dry. "Okay. The man you helped in the parking garage 3 weeks ago. Do you remember what he looked like?" "Yeah, older guy, maybe late 70s. Gray hair, old brown coat with a tear in it. He seemed like he was struggling financially." Patricia nodded and opened the folder. She pulled out a newspaper clipping and slid it across to David. "Is this the man?" David looked at the photo and his brain just stopped working. The picture showed a distinguished older man in an expensive suit, standing in front of a huge building. He had the same facial features as the guy from the parking garage, but he looked completely different. "Clean, wealthy, powerful. I don't understand," David stammered. "Mr. Rodriguez, the man you helped was Robert Thornton, one of the wealthiest real estate developers in the state. His net worth is estimated at over $300 million. David felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. "What? No, that can't be right. The guy I helped was broke. He couldn't even afford parking." Patricia pulled out more photos. Different newspaper articles, magazine covers, pictures of this Robert Thornton at charity events, cutting ribbons at building openings, shaking hands with the mayor. "He was in disguise," Patricia explained. "Mr. Thornton had been doing this for years. He would dress as a homeless person or someone struggling financially to see how people treated him when they thought he had nothing." David's head was spinning. "Why would someone do that?" "To find genuine people," Patricia said softly. "To see who would help someone without expecting anything in return." David looked at the other 2 lawyers, then back at Patricia. "I still don't understand why I'm here." Patricia took a deep breath. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'm very sorry to inform you that Robert Thornton passed away 2 weeks ago. He had a heart attack, but before he died he made some changes to his will. Changes that involve you." The room felt like it was tilting. David gripped the edge of the table. "Me? Why would his will involve me?" Patricia opened another folder, and David could see his name on official-looking documents. "Because, Mr. Rodriguez, Robert Thornton left you something substantial." David stared at the documents on the table, but the words were blurry. His hands had gone numb and he could hear his heartbeat in his ears. "I don't understand," he finally managed to say. "He left me something? Why would he do that?" "I just paid for his parking." Patricia leaned forward, her expression kind but serious. "Mr. Rodriguez, it was much more than that to him. May I be direct with you?" David nodded, not trusting his voice. "Robert Thornton left you $250,000. The room went silent. David heard the words, but they didn't make sense. It was like someone had just told him the sky was green or water was dry. That's not possible," David whispered. "There must be a mistake." "There's no mistake," Patricia said. She pulled out more documents. "There's also a full college scholarship fund that's been established for your 2 children. It will cover their tuition, books, and living expenses for any university they choose to attend." David felt tears forming in his eyes. He tried to blink them away, but they came anyway. His kids' college. He and Lisa had been putting away whatever they could in a savings account, maybe $50 a month when they could afford it. They'd been worried sick about how they'd pay for college when the time came. "Why?" David asked, his voice cracking. "I don't understand why." Patricia reached into another folder and pulled out an envelope. It was sealed with old-fashioned wax, the kind you see in movies. "He left you this letter. I think it will explain better than I can." David took the envelope with shaking hands. His name was written on it in elegant handwriting. He carefully broke the seal and pulled out several pages of handwritten text. The paper felt expensive, heavier than normal paper. He started reading, and the words hit him like waves. "Dear David Rodriguez," the letter began. "If you're reading this, then I've passed on, and you're sitting in a lawyer's office probably confused and overwhelmed. Let me explain. For the past 5 years, I've been conducting what I call humanity tests. I would disguise myself as a homeless person, or as an elderly man struggling with money, and I would go out into the world to see how people treated me when they thought I had nothing to offer them. I've done this hundreds of times. I've stood on street corners, sat in parks, struggled with small purchases in stores. And David, I have to tell you, the results were heartbreaking. Most people ignored me. Many were rude. Some were outright cruel. Out of hundreds of encounters, only 17 people helped me with genuine kindness. But out of those 17, only 3 did so without any hesitation, without any expectation, without even a moment of doubt. You were one of those 3, David, and your kindness touched me more deeply than you could know. Do you remember what you did that rainy night? You didn't just pay my parking fee. You walked me to my car. You asked if I was okay to drive. You showed concern for a complete stranger who probably looked like someone most people cross the street to avoid. You treated me with dignity and respect, the same way I watched you treat everyone else in that mall. You see, David, I didn't leave right away that night. I sat in my car for a while, watching you through my rearview mirror. I saw you help a young mother carry her stroller down the stairs. I saw you pick up trash that someone had dropped and put it in a bin. I saw you smile and wave at the cleaning crew as they started their shift. You didn't know anyone was watching. You were just being yourself. I had my assistant do some research on you. I hope you'll forgive the invasion of privacy, but I needed to know if that night was a fluke or if that's who you really are. Everything I learned confirmed what I already suspected. You're a good man, David. A truly good man in a world that doesn't have enough of them. I learned that you volunteer at the community center on your days off, that you helped your neighbor rebuild his fence after a storm, even though you'd just worked a double shift, that you donate to the food bank every month even though your own budget is tight, that your coworkers all have stories about your kindness and generosity. I also learned that you and your wife work hard for everything you have, that you worry about your children's future, that you sometimes have to choose between fixing your old car or buying new shoes for your kids. I learned that despite all your own struggles, you still find ways to help others. That's rare, David, that's precious. I've made a lot of money in my life. More than one person could ever spend. I've built buildings and developed properties. But at the end of the day, those are just structures made of steel and concrete. They don't mean anything compared to the kind of character you showed me that night. My own children from my first marriage, they'll inherit the bulk of my estate. They're well taken care of, though I worry they've become entitled and have forgotten what really matters in life. But I wanted to do something for the people who reminded me that kindness still exists in this world. The money I'm leaving you isn't about the $3.50 you paid for parking. It's about the kind of person you are. It's about the values you're teaching your children. It's about the positive impact you have on everyone around you, every single day. Use this money wisely, David. Invest in your children's education. Take care of your family. Maybe take that vacation you and your wife have been putting off. And if you can, find ways to help others the way you helped me. Don't feel guilty about accepting this gift. You earned it by simply being yourself. The world needs more people like you, and I hope this money gives you the freedom to continue being that person without the constant stress of financial worry. I have one request, though. Don't let this money change who you are. Stay humble. Stay kind. Keep treating the janitor with the same respect you'd show a CEO. Keep helping people even when no one's watching. Keep being the David Rodriguez who didn't think twice about helping an old man in a parking garage. Thank you for restoring my faith in humanity during my final days. Thank you for showing me that kindness still exists. Thank you for being exactly who you are. With deepest gratitude and respect, Robert Thornton. David finished reading and realized his face was wet with tears. He looked up at Patricia, who was watching him with understanding eyes. He wrote that 2 days before he passed, she said quietly. He was very specific about his wishes. He wanted you to have this, and he wanted you to know why. I don't know what to say, David whispered. carefully folding the letter. This is too much. I was just being decent. Anyone would have done the same thing. Patricia shook her head. That's where you're wrong, Mr. Rodriguez. Most people wouldn't have. That's exactly his point. You did something that most people don't do anymore. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped them, no questions asked. One of the other lawyers, an older man who hadn't spoken yet, cleared his throat. There is one thing we need to discuss, Mr. Rodriguez. Mr. Thornton's adult children from his first marriage are contesting the will. They're claiming their father wasn't in his right mind when he made these changes. David's heart sank. Of course, this couldn't just be simple. David felt his stomach twist into knots. They're fighting it? They think I somehow tricked him? Patricia nodded slowly. His children, 2 sons and a daughter from his first marriage. They're claiming that their father was experiencing cognitive decline. They're saying he was manipulated or that he wasn't thinking clearly when he changed his will. But I didn't even know who he was, David said, his voice rising with panic. I had no idea. How could I have manipulated him? I paid $3 for parking. We know that, the older lawyer said. His name tag read James Peterson. And we'll prove it. But I want you to be prepared. This is going to be a fight. The family has already hired expensive lawyers, and they're not going to back down easily. David put his head in his hands. Just minutes ago, he'd been overwhelmed with gratitude and hope. Now he felt sick. Maybe I should just walk away. I don't want to fight anyone. Those are his kids. They should have his money. Mr. Rodriguez, Patricia said firmly, they're already inheriting over $200 million. This isn't about need. This is about pride and greed. Robert was very clear about his wishes. He wanted you to have this, and he knew his children would fight it. That's why he documented everything so carefully. What do you mean? David asked. James opened another folder. Robert kept detailed journals of all his humanity tests. He wrote about every person he encountered, what they did, how they treated him. Your entry was 3 pages long. He wrote it the night he met you, and he referenced it several times in later entries. Patricia pulled out copies of journal pages. David could see his own name written in that same elegant handwriting. He also had his assistant investigate you thoroughly. We have witness statements from your co-workers, your neighbors, people from your community. We have security footage from that night showing the entire interaction. Security footage? David asked. From the parking garage cameras, James explained. It shows everything. You helping him, walking him to his car, making sure he was safe. But more than that, it shows what you did before and after. The young mother with the stroller. You picking up trash. Your interactions with other people. It proves you weren't just being nice to Robert specifically. That's who you are. Over the next few days, David's life turned into chaos. Somehow the media got wind of the story. It started with a local news website running the headline, "Security Guard Inherits Fortune After Small Act of Kindness." By the next day, it had spread everywhere. Reporters showed up at David's apartment building. They waited outside Riverside Mall. They tried to interview his co-workers, his neighbors, even his kids' school teachers. David and Lisa had to sit Miguel and Sophia down and explain what was happening. So that old man you helped was actually rich? Sophia asked, her 8-year-old mind trying to process it all. Very rich, sweetheart, Lisa said. And he left your dad some money because Dad was kind to him. Are we rich now? Miguel wanted to know. No, buddy, David said. We might get some money eventually, but some people are fighting about it. And even if we do get it, we're still going to be the same family. Nothing's going to change who we are. But things were already changing. At work, some of David's co-workers acted different around him. Some were supportive, but others seemed jealous or suspicious. He overheard 2 guards talking in the break room. I bet he knew who the old guy was, one said. Probably looked him up online or something. Come on, David's not like that, the other defended. For $250,000, anyone would be like that. David stood in the hallway, feeling hurt but not surprised. He'd known this was coming. Money changed everything even when you didn't have it yet. Online, things were even worse. The story had gone viral on social media. Some people called David a hero. Others called him a con artist. Strangers who didn't. know him at all, had strong opinions about whether he deserved the money. He's just a hard-working guy who showed basic human decency. Good for him. One comment read, "Nobody pays for a stranger's parking without an ulterior motive. He definitely knew who it was," another claimed. "This is what's wrong with rich people, giving money to random people instead of their own families," said another. Lisa held David one night while he cried. "I didn't ask for any of this," he said. "I just helped someone, that's all I did." "I know, baby," she whispered. "I know." The court proceedings began 3 weeks later. David had to take time off work, which meant less money coming in right when they needed it most. He sat in a courthouse that felt cold and intimidating, surrounded by lawyers in expensive suits. Robert's children were there. 2 men in their 50s and a woman in her late 40s. They looked polished and wealthy, exactly like people who grew up with everything. They wouldn't even look at David. To them, he was just some nobody trying to steal their inheritance. Their lawyer was aggressive during the depositions. "Mr. Rodriguez, isn't it true that you recognized Robert Thornton that night in the parking garage?" "No," David said. "I had no idea who he was." "You expect us to believe you'd never seen his picture in the newspaper? Never heard his name?" "I'm sure I probably had at some point, but I didn't recognize him. He looked completely different in his disguise." "How convenient," the lawyer said with a smirk. "And you just happened to help him out of the kindness of your heart?" "Yes," David said simply. "That's exactly what happened." The lawyer pulled up photos on a screen. "These are pictures of you helping other people at the mall. Your lawyers want us to believe you do this all the time. Isn't it possible you help people hoping for rewards?" David felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "I help people because it's the right thing to do. I don't expect anything in return. I never have." But the real turning point came when Patricia called David's co-worker Tony to testify. Tony had worked with David for 5 years. He was a quiet guy, retired military who didn't talk much but noticed everything. "Tell us about David Rodriguez," Patricia said. "What kind of worker is he?" Tony sat up straight in the witness chair. "David is the best person I've ever worked with. Not just the best security guard, the best person." "Can you give us examples?" "Last winter I was going through a divorce. I was a mess, barely holding it together. David brought me lunch every day for 2 months. He never made a big deal about it, just said he'd made extra. He checked on me, listened to me talk, covered my shifts when I needed time off. He didn't have to do any of that." Patricia nodded. "Did he ever ask for anything in return?" "Never. That's not who David is." Tony looked directly at Robert's children. "You want to know if David helped your father for money? I can tell you right now, he didn't. David doesn't think that way. He sees someone struggling. He helps." End of story. More witnesses came forward. The teenage kid David had helped find his parents testified. The woman whose car David had helped unlock. The janitors from the mall who talked about how David was the only security guard who learned their names and asked about their families. But the most powerful evidence came from something unexpected. Robert's personal assistant, an elderly woman named Grace who had worked for him for 30 years, asked to testify even though she wasn't required to. "I need to say something," she told the court. "I watched Robert do those humanity tests for 5 years. I saw him come back disappointed almost every time. People were cruel to him. They ignored him. They treated him like garbage. It broke his heart." She pulled out a tissue and dabbed her eyes. But the night he met David Rodriguez, he came back different. He was smiling, actually smiling. He said, "Grace, I found one. I finally found a genuinely good person." He talked about David for weeks. This wasn't some impulsive decision. Robert knew exactly what he was doing. The courtroom was completely silent as Grace continued speaking. Even Robert's children seemed uncomfortable, shifting in their seats. "Robert called me the morning before he passed away," Grace said, her voice trembling. "He told me he was at peace. He said he'd found proof that good people still existed in the world, and that made his life feel complete. He mentioned David by name. He said, 'Make sure that security guard gets what I promised him. He deserves it more than anyone. She looked directly at David, tears streaming down her face. Robert was the sharpest man I ever knew, right up until his last breath. There was nothing wrong with his mind. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he wanted you to have this. Please don't let his children take that away from him. The trial stretched on for 4 months, 4 long, exhausting months where David's entire life felt like it was under a microscope. Every decision he'd ever made, every interaction he'd ever had was picked apart and analyzed. There were days he wanted to give up, to just walk away from the whole thing and go back to his normal life. But Lisa wouldn't let him quit. "That man chose you for a reason," she told him one night after a particularly brutal day in court. "He saw something special in you. Don't let them make you doubt yourself." The security footage became crucial evidence. The lawyers played it over and over in court. There was David helping the old man without hesitation, walking him to his car, making sure he was okay. But they also showed footage from other days. David helping dozens of people over the course of weeks and months, always the same kindness, always the same genuine concern. "This is who Mr. Rodriguez is," Patricia argued in her closing statement. "This isn't an act. This isn't manipulation. This is a man who treats every single person with dignity and respect, whether they're a wealthy businessman or someone who can't afford parking." Robert Thornton recognized that quality, and he wanted to reward it. That was his right as a mentally sound adult making his own decisions. The judge took 2 weeks to make a decision. Those were the longest 2 weeks of David's life. He tried to keep working, tried to keep things normal for his kids, but the waiting was torture. He'd wake up in the middle of the night, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Finally, the call came. The judge had made a ruling. David and Lisa sat in the courtroom, holding hands so tight their fingers hurt. Robert's children sat on the other side, their expensive lawyers arranged around them like a wall. The judge, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a serious expression, looked around the courtroom before speaking. "I've reviewed all the evidence in this case very carefully," she began. "I've read Mr. Thornton's journals, watched the security footage, listened to testimony from dozens of witnesses. I've examined Mr. Thornton's medical records and spoken with his doctors. And I've come to a conclusion." David felt like his heart might explode. Robert Thornton was by all accounts a brilliant businessman with a sharp mind right up until his death. His doctors confirmed there was no cognitive decline, no signs of dementia or mental incompetence. His journals show clear, rational thinking. His decision to leave a portion of his estate to Mr. Rodriguez was made deliberately and with full understanding of what he was doing. The judge looked at Robert's children. "I understand this is difficult for you. Losing a parent is never easy, and having to share his legacy with a stranger is painful. But your father's wishes were clear, well documented, and legally sound. Mr. Rodriguez did not manipulate your father. He simply showed kindness to someone who appeared to need help. That kindness meant something profound to your father, and it was his right to acknowledge it as he saw fit." She turned to David. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'm ruling in your favor. The will stands as written. You are entitled to the $250,000, and the college fund for your children will be established as Mr. Thornton requested." David heard Lisa gasp beside him. He felt tears running down his face, but he couldn't move. He couldn't believe it was real. "However," the judge continued, "I want to say something to everyone in this courtroom. This case has reminded me why I became a judge. It's not about money. It's about recognizing what truly matters in life. Mr. Thornton spent his final years searching for genuine kindness, and he found it in Mr. Rodriguez. That's the real story here, not the inheritance, but the reminder that simple acts of decency still matter in this world." The legal paperwork took another few weeks to finalize, but finally, the money came through. David and Lisa sat at their kitchen table, staring at the bank statement that showed a number they'd never imagined seeing. "What do we do now?" Lisa whispered. David thought about Robert's letter, about his request to stay the same person, to not let the money change him. "First," he said slowly, "we put money aside for the kids' college. That was his gift to them, and we're going to honor it." "Okay," Lisa nodded. "What else?" "We pay off the car and fix that leak in the bathroom we've been ignoring. We take the vacation we've been talking about for 10 years. Maybe Disney World with the kids?" Lisa smiled, but there were tears in her eyes. "And then?" David pulled out a notebook and started writing. I want to set up a scholarship fund for kids whose parents work service jobs. Security guards, janitors, retail workers. People like us. Kids who might not have other options for college. David, that's beautiful, Lisa said. And I want to donate to the homeless shelter downtown. And the food bank. And maybe help some of our neighbors who are struggling. He looked up at his wife. We've been where they are. We know what it's like to worry about making rent or buying groceries. Now we can help. The next week, David went back to work at Riverside Mall. Some people thought he was crazy for not quitting, but David knew he needed to keep working. The job wasn't just about money. It was about purpose, about being useful, about helping people. Tony found him during his break. Hey man, you doing okay? That was a lot to go through. Yeah, David said honestly. It was intense, but we got through it. So, you're really staying? You could retire, you know. Live easy, David shook his head. This is where I belong, Tony. This job, helping people, being part of this community. That's not going to change. That evening, David got a call from a local news station wanting to interview him. They wanted to know how the money had changed his life, what he planned to do with it, how it felt to win the case. David thought for a moment before answering. The money is a blessing, and I'm grateful for it. But the real gift Robert Thornton gave me wasn't the inheritance. It was the reminder that kindness matters, that treating people with dignity and respect has value beyond what you can measure in dollars. So what's your message to people watching? The reporter asked. David smiled. Help people when you can, not because you might get something out of it, but because it's the right thing to do. You never know whose life you might touch. You never know what small act of kindness might mean to someone else. I paid $3.50 for parking, and it changed my entire life. But the truth is, helping that old man would have been worth it even if nothing had come from it. That's the point. That's what Robert was trying to teach everyone. 6 months later, David was still working at Riverside Mall, still helping people every day. The scholarship fund he'd created had helped 5 students so far. His kids were thriving, knowing their college was paid for. Lisa had been able to cut back her hours at the hospital to spend more time with the family. But the biggest change wasn't in their bank account. It was in the ripple effect that spread through their community. People who heard David's story started helping others more. Co-workers at the mall started their own small acts of kindness. Neighbors looked out for each other more. One evening, as David was finishing his shift, a young guy came up to him. Are you the security guard from the news? The one who helped that rich guy? David nodded, a bit uncomfortable with the attention. Yeah, that's me. I just wanted to say thank you. Your story inspired me. I've been going through a tough time, feeling like nothing I do matters. But seeing what happened with you, it reminded me that small acts of kindness do matter. So I've been trying to help people more, you know? Just little things, and it's making me feel better about life. After the young guy walked away, David stood there for a moment, letting those words sink in. That was Robert's real legacy. Not the money, but the message. Be kind, help people. Treat everyone with dignity. David pulled out his phone and looked at a photo he'd saved. It was the last page of Robert's letter, the part he read whenever he needed a reminder. Keep being the David Rodriguez who didn't think twice about helping an old man in a parking garage. He smiled and put his phone away. Then he did what he did every day. He walked through the mall, nodding at familiar faces, helping anyone who needed it, living the kind of life that Robert Thornton had believed was worth celebrating. Because in the end, that rainy night in the parking garage hadn't just changed David's life. It had reminded him and everyone who heard the story of something important. Kindness isn't just about grand gestures or huge donations. Sometimes it's just about paying attention to the people around you, offering help when you can, and treating everyone like they matter. Because they do. Everyone matters. And sometimes $3.50 is enough to prove it.